She's become my good friend, and she is here to talk about her story with bulimia and healing this disorder with Iboga and Ibogaine. So, welcome, Karen. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So, if you would start by telling us your story.
I was bulimic for 35 years, starting in my
Mhm.
early 20s. A little atypical there. That happened, usually does, and it ruled my life. So a good day was binging and purging maybe once or twice, and up to 6 to 10 times a day on bad days. It literally ran my life. I was still able to have a job and a family and a bunch of husbands, all of the dysfunction that goes
A
with
bunch of husbands.
an addiction.
Mhm.
But I heard about Ibogaine, heard about it being a resetting mechanism, a great medicine for um, opiate addicts. And I thought, well, if it works for that, addiction's addiction, right? It goes to the same place in the brain. And not knowing as much about brain as I do now, I jumped in and tried a flood dose, which is a large dose. To explain what Iboga, the difference between Iboga and Ibogaine. Iboga is the root bark itself. It
Mhm.
is from the root of a tree, and it can be sustainably harvested. And it takes 10 years to maturity. So when you extract it, you get Ibogaine, and you're taking a smaller dose. It removes some of the alkaloids. It's really effective for a detox. And it just, that first time I did it over 7 years ago, it was like, bam, instant instant reset, and it showed me what was possible. And I had done all the usual things. I tried hypnotherapy, I tried inpatient treatment where you're just planning on what you're going to do when you leave. You know, you're basically force fed and not allowed to exercise. Really terrible stuff. And my understanding is that treatment in the States has not really changed that much in it's been like 25, 30 years since I went in for treatment. And I did therapy and I did SSRIs, that, the usual treatment. I went to nutritionists that tell you what to eat, but if you can't control what you're eating, that's pretty useless if you can't follow the information. And I think most of us pretty much know what clean eating is and healthy eating is in these days with all the information that's easily available to us.
Mhm.
So I tried this and I saw what was possible, and it may sound like not much, but I was free of 6 weeks. And
Mhm.
I was in a toxic relationship, so I couldn't really do the personal work. And I also was told very clearly, this is not a magic pill. This isn't a cure. You have to do the personal work. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But I thought with that magical thinking that we all have as children, we still have that inner child inside that
Mhm.
thinks you're all powerful. And I was able to not able to do the work. So fast forward to 2.5 years later, the bulimia was worse than it had ever been. I really dropped to a new low, which I didn't even think was possible. And I did it again, but this time I knew more about setting intentions and pre-care and doing some work and what would be needed to do afterward. And about 7 months after that, well, actually 6 months after that, I did my first speech at the presentation at the Portland Psychedelic Society. And my only message was the same as it is now. This works for eating disorders. And I was thinking there's no one else out there talking about this. So I kind of elected myself to be the person to tell the world. And a month after that, unbeknownst to me at the time, this opportunity came along. An Ibogaine aftercare center opened up in Mexico, south of Ensenada in the high desert mountains. So I just went to volunteer for 3 months. And basically, my reason for that was to hijack some free aftercare for myself. I said, I'll be the cook. I love to cook. Cooking is
Sure.
not a problem for me. And I thought, well, I can go horseback riding, I can do breath work, I can do yoga, I can really get the kind of environment, the kind of community environment that will really help me sustain these changes to be permanent. And it worked. And I 3 months, and then I stayed 3 more months. And after that, it was like, who are you kidding? Oh, there's Hector on there. Hi, Hector. He's a good friend of mine. He knows me from where I work from a couple of years
Hi,
ago.
Hector.
Anyway,
Good to have you.
I just ended up staying. It was like, are you kidding me? I don't want to go back to the machine. I don't want to go back to the things that I know that don't work. And so I was working mainly with opiate addicts for the first 2.5 years, and it was a crash course because that's not my background. That's not my background at all. And so it was just a lot of learning curves. And I got some coaching training along the way with Being True to You, which is a really rigorous program that includes the use of psychedelics as opening tools. And I was off. And after about 2.5 years of that, I got sick with COVID, which put me flat on my back. It was in the early days of the pandemic. And I just laid there grateful that something happened to make me slow down and realize that I wasn't living my purpose, and that my purpose is to help people like myself. So since then, I've been upping my game and just trying to get clients one at a time. I've done it different ways, but I'm affiliated with an Ibogaine clinic right in the same area that I had worked for them before. And so I'm working with people that I've known for 4 years, and it's a good thing. Most of the clients are drug addicts. Sometimes we'll get an alcoholic or two, but when I have a bulimia client, I bring them into the center for the community program and activities for the staff. We have a PhD doctor now. We have nursing staff that monitors people constantly, 24/7, as we give them low dose medicine. I should talk about the protocols. There is low to medium dose, and there's a flood dose. I mentioned the flood dose before. That's like a big dose, puts you flat on your back, and your depth perception and motor coordination is completely cut off. And so, it's like, where's my bed? Is it here or is it here? I'm not really sure. But generally, there's images, there's visions. And what it's doing, what the Iboga is doing, because they both have the same mechanisms, very dirty molecule. It goes through every area of the brain and scrubs it clean, and it resets you temporarily to a pre-addictive state. So basically, your tastes are that of a 7-year-old child. A 7-year-old child isn't going to think about binging and purging, isn't going to want a cigarette or alcohol or to smoke on a crack pipe or to inject yourself with anything. Kids are afraid of shots. So it gives you this window of opportunity, about 30 days, where it's most noticeable, where you can create the life that you want. And that's where the work comes in. So the medicine is really the easy part, as scary as it might be to people, especially people who have not done psychedelics before. That's
Well,
the easy
Iboga
part.
is the big one.
It's a big one.
I call it the big one. The big one. Yeah.
I've had a couple of clients that have not done psychedelics before, and so there's that fear. We're all programmed and brainwashed from the government propaganda of the 60s and 70s, and that continues today, even in the middle of this renaissance where people are demanding medicines that are God-given. They're from the earth, and and they work for addiction. It will help with just about any addiction except for benzodiazepines. That is something that you just need to do a slow, rough taper down on, and your emotions are all over the place. But you can do that too with the help of Iboga, and many of our clients do.
Okay, so I have lots of questions. Okay, first, can we talk a little bit about the bulimia, the
Sure.
eating disorder, and how old were you when it surfaced, when it came
I
to?
was 21, and I knew I was married young and had a child a couple of years later, and it was a reaction to divorce, probably. And I wanted to be thin. I was about 20 pounds overweight. Big deal. I guess I'm probably 20 pounds overweight now. That was the thinking, that I just needed to be more attractive in order to meet men. And this was also a time when Diana Spencer was hitting the media for the first time, and alarmingly thin. And I'm thinking, oh, hey, that could work for me. So I literally studied how to do this. I went to the library and looked up articles on bulimia and taught myself how to binge and purge. And I want to really emphasize here that bulimia is something that the stigma is still really out there in a big way. People that are engaged in this behavior tend to be vain and concerned with their appearance, and they don't want to be thought of as being out of control, and certainly not deliberately purging in any way. So it's really these people, this segment of our population, which can't even be estimated how much it is. It's because of the secrecy factor. I've talked to people on the phone who have never spoken to anybody about this but me. I've been in recovery meetings, and spoken about my bulimia to have people approach me afterwards. It's like, I've never told anybody this before. The shame is
Mhm.
unparalleled. Thanks to Alcoholics Anonymous, the last 50 years, alcoholism the stigma has lifted considerably. We don't have the Skid Row bum image that the United States and the world really thought of alcoholics. And it's starting to happen with drug addiction. With bulimia, it's a new frontier, and treatment, the understanding is really not there. The root cause, it the just don't do it. Like the Nancy Reagans, just say no. That whole mindset is really there around bulimia. And the fact is, the drug of choice is everywhere. It's at every social event, every
Well, right.
coming of age ritual, or marriage, or a holiday, or just dinner. And food is available on every street corner, whether a restaurant or tacos to go, or you name it. It's everywhere. So
Yeah.
unlike drugs and alcohol, where the goal is abstinence, you can't be abstinent with food, or you're going to die. You're going to develop anorexia, which is a lot more
Right.
serious, because eventually the body will start eating the organs for energy, and you die. This is what happened to
Yes.
Karen Carpenter.
Yes. Yes.
So it's a rough one, because you have to make friends with food and learn for the first time, co-create that healthy relationship with food. Food is medicine. We are the medicine is basically the message. So I just
That's a
believe
hard
very
one, though.
strongly in taking the stigma off this and
Yes.
encouraging people to talk about it. So I'm very open about this.
Yeah.
Continue to shout from the rooftops to anyone that's going to listen.
Yeah.
Bulimia
Yes.
needs to be talked about. We have to take the shame off of it, because that keeps us in our cycle of doing something that doesn't work. And I was
Yes.
a really hard case. Like I said, I tried so many different things, and maybe it was mitigated a little bit for a time, maybe it improved. But until 5 years ago, my recovery time, or my clean time, let's say my free time, was measured in uh, days, putting a couple of days together, not weeks, not months, not years.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's a big one. And this is hard for people to understand. And I get that. I get
Yeah.
that. But food tastes good so that we will eat it, so that we stay alive. And we can
Yeah.
abuse anything. We can abuse sex. We can abuse working. We can, abuse our emotions and
Working
how we
out.
relate to people. I mean, anything can be an addiction.
Absolutely. Okay. So when when you talk about this helping with bulimia, how about, I mean, you just touched on anorexia nervosa. What about that eating disorder? What about other eating disorders? Have
Well,
you had
this
any
works for binge
experience
eating.
working
Yeah. Binge eating
with that?
disorder is basically the same thing as
Okay.
bulimia without the purging.
Mhm. Okay.
So it works for that beautifully. Now, anorexia is a completely different animal. And one of the things that Ibogaine does, and Iboga, when you're doing a low dose protocol over a number of days, leading up to about 2 weeks, usually, you have a reduced appetite. So I'm not sure at all about the efficacy for anorexia. And because anorexics are underweight and their health is precarious and their heart is not strong,
Right,
it's
right, right.
it's
You may
something
not
that
even
I
be able
don't
to
touch.
do the
Someone
medicine.
else is going to have to come along and do that one. I'm staying in my own lane. I'm staying
Yeah,
in my own
yeah.
lane. I'm sure it would work. I'm sure it would work, but it would be so dangerous that I
Right,
kind of don't really want to touch it. I'm not a
right.
medical
Because
person. I'm a lay person, but I am surrounded by medical professionals, and I just someone else is going to have to pick up the baton on that one.
and the you have to have a pretty stringent health exam before you take this medicine,
Yes,
correct? I mean,
yes,
can you
good,
talk
good
about that a
point.
little bit?
Yes. A lot of people will hear about this online and order the medicine from Africa from some shady dealer, where you've got
Oh my
kids out on the
God.
streets that have no idea how
That's
potent this medicine
crazy.
is. And so you need a blood test, a comprehensive, the rainbow panel, I think it's called, the full spectrum blood test, and that will show any mineral imbalances, and potassium, magnesium, things like that are really important. Those tend to be depleted when someone is purging or using alcohol or drugs. Everybody basically shows up, regardless of their size, malnourished, because something is happening with their body that's not allowing them to receive nutrition. In the case of bulimia, the food is in just for a little bit and immediately expunged out. So also an EKG is really important for anyone doing Ibogaine to make sure that there is not a prolonged QT interval, because what Ibogaine does is it takes all of your signs and generally reduces it by 20. So you need to have a strong heart. The heart has to be healthy and working well. So does the liver, because the liver converts the Ibogaine into noribogaine, and that's why it works for so long. That it can stay in your system up to 6 months, but it's really noticeable for about 30 days. There's a reduced need for sleep, things like that. And the purging went for, in the case of someone who has bulimia, the purging can cause a contraction, which over time turns into a prolonged QT interval. So for those clients, we need to give them magnesium, potassium, just keep working with them, and then take them for testing about 5 days later and make sure we're good to go. And then once we start dosing them with the medicine at our facility, we do low to medium dose protocol, which has a stacking effect. So you're getting more medicine, less of a dose, but over a longer period of time. So you're getting the reset that way too. And then the clients have the option that gives them the reset in a friendlier way, where it's not this big bam shock to your system. And you're in it. And I'm a fan of both. I've used both for different things, and either way, but a client can opt to get a flood just to make sure, so they have that experience. And since they came all the way to Mexico and they're spending all this time and money and they just want to make sure that they got it, we can do that too.
So how long does somebody stay with you during this process?
I have learned over the course of doing this work for the last 2.5 years that it really takes 30 days to do this. So I generally won't accept anyone in less time than that, because it's 2 weeks of medicine dosing and possibly a flood dose if they choose. And then after that, it's just really working on themselves and making sure that they've got it. We all have the answers inside us. We were born with all the information, but we forget, right? We came into this existence and we forget, and our brains act as filters so that we're not, so that you and I conversation, so that we can drive a car, so that we can balance our checkbook and do the things that we have to do in this life in order to thrive, right? So it brings you into a state where you can look at yourself in an observer state without the judgment and with compassion. And so instead of thinking, oh, I'm a piece of shit because I'm out of control, it's like, well, I'm understanding why I was out of control. There were good reasons why I chose to step into this addiction, and I'm resolving them. So the Ibogaine essentially shows you what's possible and gives you a window of opportunity to create that. And then it's just a matter of living your life in a very different way. So nature abhors a vacuum, and when you have an addiction, it's consuming you pretty much 24/7 and in your dream state too. How do I get this, whatever it is my addiction is, in this case food, how do I get it? What do I want? How can I pay for it? What's my cover story for leaving everybody? Where can I purge so no one will notice I'm gone or hear me and there will be no evidence? And what's my cover story if I get caught? Oh, I have a migraine. Or, I use that one a lot because I actually did have migraines for a long time. And the interesting thing was a lot of side benefits came along that I wasn't expecting. I just wanted to handle my bulimia, but the migraines that I had beginning in my 40s, I went into menopause real quick, reduced to about once a year for a few years. And I don't remember the last time I had a migraine now. Diet Cola, which I drank every day, probably a gallon, tasted awful. I was jonesing for it. I was like, oh, that sounds good. Something carbonated. And I spit it back out. Like I was, again, this 7-year-old kid. If they taste Diet Cola, they're gonna spit it out. It's horrible. It's got rat poison basically in it. And so you just have this wonderful opportunity to create yourself again with the knowledge that you have of, however many years you have behind you. I was 55 the first time I did it. And let's see, 58 the second time that I did the flood doses. And then I've done the low to medium dose protocol about a year ago for a different issue for alcohol. And guess what? It works for that too. So now I can actually speak to the withdrawal process for clients. It gave me a lot more compassion. It was just really a good learning opportunity. I dropped my self-care there for a while, and I'd been flirting with alcoholism probably for 45 years. Didn't always drink a
Mhm.
lot. There were years where I didn't, depending on who my friends were. And then, but this thing inside me was doing push-ups outside.
It does that. Oh, ooh, I lost your sound for a second. I lost your sound. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can't hear you. Oh, there it is. Now I can hear
Okay.
you. Yeah, I lost you for a second there.
Yeah, I got the little message saying, "Yeah, we're having trouble with the connection again."
Okay, so after somebody comes through this, let's talk about the next step, because you know the plant medicine path is all about integration. It's why we
Yes.
started the plant medicine path. Integration's everything. I
Yes.
don't care what medicine it is or what modality or whatever it is. So how talk to me about integration and what happens after somebody leaves you after 30 days. What happens there?
Well, I tend to think of integration as the process of becoming whole. So
Mhm.
integration begins the moment you think, hey, maybe this could work for me. Okay. And that's where the seed is planted. And there's a mindset change. I'm not hearing you now. Oh, okay.
You don't hear
There's a
me? Can you hear me?
mindset
Okay.
change. So they're with me and they have a plan. I have worked with them to create just a basic script of how they want their daily life to be, and then 6 months out where they want it to be, just in terms of the contentment and leading a purposeful life. And it's
Mhm.
all about being aligned in integrity with yourself, and that finding that integrity is a process that we work on together. So I am with them. We have bungalows at our facility. It's a beautiful facility, spread out, wide open space, and there are 6 bungalows where there are 2 beds in each bungalow, separate bedrooms, and a shared bathroom, living room, and a small kitchen and refrigerator. And so I'm there with them because most people are like, well, I'm afraid to be around drug addicts. And they realize that there's nothing to be afraid of,
Yeah. Right.
They
Addiction is
realize that.
addiction is
The
addiction.
main reason for me to be there is as their coach and advocate, and to protect them from purging, because once the medicine starts, there can be no purging unless it's the body purging the medicine,
Mhm.
which can happen. But there can be no deliberate purging because you're in this big neuroplastic state, right? So you're going to reinforce whatever you do is going to be doubled down and become more important than ever. So it's really important. And this is Mexico, so the bathrooms there don't have fans. The water pressure isn't real high. There's no way to drown out the sound of purging. So we just make agreements on that they fully, sign up on. So I'm not being the probation officer on how
Mhm.
to protect them from the purging. But while we're there, we work on their life plan, and they're getting the beauty of working with this medicine in a daily way, because you can still walk around on the lower doses. And we get them up to bring them pretty close to a high dose once we understand, through monitoring their vitals, how they can handle the um, the medicine, and making sure there's no adverse events with the blood pressure and the heart and things like that.
Mhm.
But
And you are a certified Being True to You coach.
I'm actually one course
Right.
shy of that, and I
So
need to
so
just
you
finish
did Being
that.
True to You.
But
You've got
I
all the
say that I am.
information.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
it's more true than not true. But
You have the information and the knowledge.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
and I will wrap that
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Actually, I should do that while I have a little bit of time off right now. But we're full time, and then culminating with them. And I usually continue to coach them remotely at home. I mean, these people are my sisters now. They're my
Yeah.
family.
Right.
And so whether it's a formal coaching or just staying in touch, that is happening. But they understand that when they get home is where the real work begins. I mean, first of all, you're coming to the scene of the crime, which is
Yeah.
triggering in itself. The memories don't go away. We remember what we did. There's still the mental cravings, if not the physical cravings. The physical cravings go away unless you start engaging in the behavior again, and then you have to start all over again. But it's different, and we say, in 12-step groups, we say relapse is part of recovery. And this doesn't mean that you're planning to do that, but it means if it does happen, you're going to jump right back on the horse, that it's another learning and growing opportunity, and it does not equal failure. it just means up. You got to level up again, honey. And
An
so,
opportunity for growth and learning is the way
my
I always
clients
look
have
at
not relapsed, by the way. But one is 7 months free and one is like 5.5 months free, or pretty close to that. And so they're in the early stages, but they knew when they went home to take some time to not just jump right back into their regular life, to really start the day with self-care and self-care throughout the whole day, and be aware of triggers, be aware of pulls back to old behavior, because again, the memory is still there, and to realize that the triggers are vastly different from acting on it and carrying that behavior through. So it's about building blocks of success. And it's so
it.
wonderful to remotely watch them go through this and
Okay.
see them reclaim their lives.
Well, it's freedom. It's a freedom. I mean,
It
that
really
keeps you
is.
in chains. I have a very close family member who I love very much who has struggled with this.
Yes.
And it's really tough because, like you said, food is has to be a part of our life. And so I went to treatment many years ago, and I came out of treatment and I never had to have alcohol in my home again, or get a prescription drug if I didn't need to.
Right.
Food is different. You have to have food. It's
It's
everywhere.
got to have food at home. You have to have a plan. But once you've made friends with it,
Yeah,
and it's not
it's
the enemy, it's medicine, it becomes a little easier.
Mhm. Okay. So how long have you been free of your bulimia?
Oh, it's more than 5 years.
That's incredible. It's
Yeah.
really incredible. It's a powerful disease. It's a powerful disease.
And after about a year, it became pretty easy,
That's amazing.
and everybody, but that really shocked me that before I was bulimic, I still had issues with food.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
issues with, numbing myself with overeating, because this is an easy addiction to get, because before you're at the age where you would consider cigarette smoking or alcohol or drugs or sex or
Sure.
whatever, food's in the home, it's there, it's within reach, it's easy, it's accessible, depending
It's
on the kind of
comfort.
food our parents had. My parents did not have junk food, but I was a babysitter, and I had my own money. I had an allowance before that, and so there's all, when I look at it deeply, these acting out behaviors were really always there.
Yeah.
So it's been a
Well,
lifelong struggle. Um, I started to have a problem with sugar about a year ago when I stopped drinking, and so it was kind of I got to revisit the struggle that I hadn't had.
hmm.
And to that degree, it is still a struggle. It
Hmm.
is still a struggle.
Well, I mean, we're human, and it just keeps happening
Yeah. But when I'm
because it
eating
doesn't end.
healthy, the way that I like to eat and what my body
Yeah.
wants, the sugar cravings aren't there. It's simple. Maybe not always easy, but it's simple. Just the basic
Right. Right.
mechanisms of what the body needs and how the brain rewards us. So with the purging, what that does, because people have asked me if I'm sitting in an ayahuasca ceremony, for example, where there's always some kind of purging by
Right.
somebody.
Right. Right.
Well, is this going to trigger you? And it's like, no, no, no. This
Yeah.
is medicine, number one. I don't have a full stomach, number two. And it's not the purging is not the addictive part. The food is the addictive part. But what the purging does is, after you have released this bulk of, 3 pounds, 5 pounds of food, whatever, something ridiculous,
Mm.
it there's a dopamine hit in your brain,
Yeah.
because you
Right.
feel free. So that part makes you feel good until
Mhm.
there you are with an empty stomach. So in 2 or 3 hours, you're going to be hungry again, right? And then it starts again. And so that's the hamster wheel of bulimia that is just so awful. It's
Really
really
hard to get
awful.
off of. Well, you have provided some incredible information. We've got your number up here. Is this the best way for somebody to get a hold of you? You can always find us on the plant medicine path. We can
Yes.
direct you to Karen as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
My name's Karen O'Neill, Oneel. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. It's just type it in. I look like me. There's not that many Karen
Mhm.
O'Neills with that spelling out there, just one other who's probably a distant cousin or something. Also, there is a website, bulimiatreatmentcenter.com, that I'm working on right now. It's not live yet. So I think once
Well, we'll
that,
put that link up when it's
yeah,
ready
I'm in
to.
my personal leveling up stage. As I've alluded to in the last year, I've had some struggles, which was just more opportunities for growth. But when this hits, it's going to hit big. There will be the need for a center specifically for this, whether it's adjunct to the one I'm working at now or a separate facility. Maybe Costa Rica might be better because bulimia clients in general tend to be more the need to control, like, well, this
Mhm.
fork is dirty. It's like, honey, it's Mexico. you know that need for perfection, the illusion of
Yeah,
perfection to
yep.
mask what's going on inside. So using myself as an example, believe what you see. I'm put together, I'm dressed nicely, I've got my makeup on or whatever. Believe what I'm showing you, this perfect person, because I really don't want you to see the shame and the secrecy and my self-degradation that I'm carrying around inside.
And there's a lot of shame with with the eating
When
disorder.
you
I
are
mean, it seems to
okay,
be
and I'm
more
just going
shame
to
than
say it,
any other disease.
when you
Dis.
are doing something where you can't control your food intake, so that's gluttony, right? One of the seven deadly sins. So there's that mindset of the world and of us unto ourselves, and then the deliberate purging, which involves sticking your finger down your throat to make this happen. It's a repugnant idea to most people, as it
Yeah,
should be, right? And we
right.
don't want to be judged for this compulsive behavior, this loop cycle that we're stuck in. We don't want to be thought of that way. We want to be thought of as like, believe what I'm showing you, because this is the real me. Yeah. And actually what happens is after this medicine and after these lifestyle changes, the real me or the real you is radiant, just
Yeah,
shines and comes out. And it doesn't mean that everything is perfect all the time. Of course it's not. There's always going to be more leveling up. But
always.
yeah, that's the one thing we can count on is change, and change is a beautiful thing.
Mhm. It is.
It's a roller coaster for sure. But that
Yeah,
radiance and that found born again glow. I mean, here I am 5 years later, and I've been through some stuff, and
yeah,
and it's still there. It's still there.
yeah. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing and getting the word out there and taking some of the shame off of this.
Thank you.
I believe that I will be coming down to see you with someone I love very much. So
We would
I'm really
welcome you.
excited. I'm so grateful that you're out there talking about this.
Oh, here's a Facebook user. It doesn't show on this platform the name,
As addicted to
except for
purging.
a couple of people. But 30 years ago, I was addicted to purging. It was a high for sure. Yeah, thank you for saying that. This is the hidden thing. This is the thing that people don't want to talk about, which is why it has to be talked about.
It does.
If
It
this is
does.
something that's happening to you, something that you're doing, my God, we can talk about it. That's where it starts. We're going to talk.
Absolutely. And you're a great person to talk to. We've been talking
Thank
a
you.
bit lately. I've been
We
enjoying
have,
it
and
very
I've
much.
enjoyed it. Let's stay
Yeah.
in touch
We'll
for sure.
continue.
I
All
really
right.
appreciate you. You reached out to me, and this kind of
Nice.
made me feel like, "Oh, I've arrived." And I had another I've arrived moment too when a woman called me about her daughter, and my name came up in a Gabor Mate seminar.
Mm, love
And
him.
so word is getting out. Word is getting out.
Word, where it is. We're here to bring the word. That's what we're doing.
I'm going to
There's
shout
a
it from the
different way to
rooftops
heal.
until I'm dead.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, I'll shout it with you. All
Thank
right,
you.
well, thank you so much. Get in touch with us. Get in touch with Karen. We can guide you to her place down in Mexico, and I just appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you.
All right, aho. Bye bye, everyone.
Aho. Thanks, everyone.